Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our third cycle in 1999, talking about a movie on this episode. In this episode, we're talking about The Matrix, just an iconic sci-fi classic, so to speak. An amazing film, still holds up incredibly well, 25 years later. I didn't see this movie initially when it was in theaters, so I kind of missed out on that. But I had a lot of friends in high school that saw it and absolutely loved it. Remember, one of my classmates was wanting to get the cell phone, like the cell phone that Neo uses when he's in the office building, and it's got like this like the pop out. Basically, the keypad is underneath the thing and it slides down like that. It looks really cool. Also, like the sunglasses in this movie are cool. Just like the entire like costume design and all that kind of stuff is just incredible. But right now, it's unfortunately not streaming on any of the streaming services that I have. I think you can rent it through like Apple or Amazon. It's like $3 to rent it or something like that. But a few years ago, when I rewatched it for a different, or back in 2019, I think it was on HBO, I think, or it was on Max. Now it's not streaming currently. The only one that's streaming is Matrix Resurrections. So I ended up having to break out the DVD of this. Still looks really good. Obviously, it doesn't look as good as Blu-ray, or I think the streaming quality is a little bit better. But fired this up a few nights ago. Still had an amazing time with it. I think this was my second or third DVD. The first DVD I bought in the year 2000 was the Terminator 2. I think it was like the Ultimate Edition. And then I remember buying The Matrix like right after that. So this is like either DVD number 2 or DVD number 3 in my collection there. But I have some notes here about the movie. We're going to discuss that and then get through like the plot and all that. And as a bonus, I actually found my old notebook for the 1999 movie series I was doing in 2019. That may have been the last time I watched it on streaming. But I also saw it again in 2019 in theaters and in 2021. But I have my old notebook, so when we get to the plot, I'll probably pull some of the information from that notebook. I was looking for that one from like a previous video and couldn't find it, but I ended up finally being able to locate that notebook. But let me go ahead and get my notes here. But there we go. So The Matrix, first released March 31st, 1999. Like I said, initially missed this in theaters on the first go around, and then watched it on HBO a bunch, and then of course on DVD. And then I did see it in 2019 when they did the 20th anniversary re-release. I unfortunately made the mistake though of seeing it in Dolby, which it looked great, it sounded great. However, there were certain scenes, like primarily the lobby shootout, probably the most iconic scene of the movie, or one of the most iconic scenes in the film. And the audio mix was a little bit off. So Dolby is just very loud. It's obviously more audio driven than anything else with Dolby like surround systems and whatever speaker setups they have. So there is a song in that scene, "Spy Break" by the Propellerheads, which I was really looking forward to hearing during that scene, because it kind of starts and then there's a part where I think it cuts to Neo doing something. It cuts to Trinity, and then it cuts back to Neo, and he's pulling two like little submachine guns out of his jacket, and that's when Spy Break really kind of like is very audible. It's like or however it goes, something like that. That's my best attempt. But in the Dolby mix, the sound of the gunshots and the sound of like bullets hitting walls or hitting their targets, the sound of like the kind of like bullet shells like hitting the ground, kind of pretty much almost entirely drowned out any of the music. So it was really hard to hear the music when I saw it in Dolby. Still a great experience though, and it was still a lot of fun. But then that was in 2019. In 2021, they re-released it again. Unfortunately, they didn't re-release it with The Matrix Reloaded or The Matrix Revolutions. So they re-released it as a kind of lead-in to The Matrix Resurrections, which is the fourth one that came out in 2021. So I saw that again, and then this time we saw it in IMAX and not Dolby. And I was able to hear the music a little bit better. Like the audio mix was a little bit more balanced out in the IMAX version. Like I said, unfortunately, they didn't do the other two, which would have been cool to see the entire trilogy, maybe like release one a week leading up to the fourth movie. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. So it was just basically uh, just see the Matrix again in 2019 and then in 2021. Because it would be cool to see the other two because I hadn't seen those in theaters since 2003, whenever they were brand new. But back to our notes here. So I had an English teacher in high school. She was mostly she was an English teacher, but she was also so I didn't have any English classes with her, but she also was the teacher of the film class. So like the film class I took my junior and senior year, she was the teacher of that. She saw this movie, absolutely loved it, and really wanted to take our film class to see it. I just don't. They never panned out. Probably like a timing thing, just because our class periods were an hour and a half, and the Matrix is like 2 hours and 16 minutes. And then you would have to obviously get drive to the theater, which is probably from where it was maybe like 15 minutes away or something like that. So it would definitely interfere with whatever classes we had after that class. So unfortunately, we were never able to do that. But she did want to take our class to see it. She absolutely loved the movie, loved the concepts and the themes of it. Apparently, so the Wachowskis were inspired by anime and martial arts films, especially like Hong Kong, kind of like The Wire, kind of I think Wire Fu is what it might be called. Fu films, like kind of like John Woo style kind of stuff. So very influenced by those. This movie gave birth essentially to Bullet Time, which is one of the kind of really cool parts. Is like where basically the slow motion, like Trinity's kick, it's not necessarily bullet time, but it's in that vein. And obviously, the big one is when the agent is shooting at Neo and he's dodging the bullets and all that. Bullet time became like it's a thing for like a couple years where it was almost everywhere. So like it showed up in I remember like the first Charlie's Angels movie had a bullet time sequence where I think it was Drew Barrymore's character gets shot, but then you see kind of like later in the film that she survived because like it shows like a very slowed down version of it, similar to how Neo is dodging bullets in this. Max Payne, the video game, used basically essentially bullet time as a huge gameplay feature, to where you could basically like slow down and do all the diving, like the way Neo and Smith dive at each other in the subway, very much like that. So a very influential and groundbreaking film from a kind of, especially from a visual effects standpoint. Like I put this up there with there's probably like I want to say like Star Wars is probably the first one where like filmmaking when that first movie came out really changed. Filmmaking remained, at least from like a visual effects standpoint, remained very much the same. Stuff obviously improved over time, but then the next big one was probably I would say like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, like that time period. Visual effects changed a lot, and then they changed a lot when The Matrix came out. And I want to say maybe like the first Avatar is probably where like they changed again. So it's kind of The Matrix is definitely up there in films I think that kind of pushed the envelope from a visual effects standpoint and basically helped create like new visual effects like technology and all that kind of stuff. But basically, film was a huge, massive success. Cost $63 million roughly to make the film, and then it ended up grossing $460 million. I think it was like the fourth highest grossing movie of 1999. I think obviously Star Wars is probably the first. I would have to like look at some of the other information about that, but my research said it was cost $63 million, grossed $460 million. Won nominated for four Academy Awards, won all four of them, and those were also for visual effects. I think it was visual effects, editing, and then the two sound awards for best sound and then best sound like mixing or whatever it was, or sound editing. But basically, the cast in this movie is iconic. Like it's kind of like one of Keanu Reeves' like most iconic films. Like I put it up there with like Johnny Utah being one of them. Johnny Utah, Jack Traven, Neo, probably like the three movies I think of the most when I think of Keanu Reeves. You also have like obviously Bill and Ted up there as well, but I definitely think, in my opinion, it's Point Break, The Matrix. I guess four. Sorry, Point Break, The Matrix. What else did I say? Speed, and probably later on the John Wick films. But just like great performance from Lawrence Fishburne, an amazing performance of Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. Just one of the coolest, I think, coolest villains in film history. Like, very kind of like imposing, but also earlier in the film, very reasonable. He's like, hey, like, we want you to help us with like getting Morpheus or whatever. Carrie-Anne Moss is great. Joe Pantoliano is great. Kind of eventually, like, actually kind of had some sympathy for his character because his character gets taken out of the Matrix. It's like basically being taken out of a prison, and then the place that you end up is like you actually like just want to go back to the way it was before. He shouldn't have turned on his like friends, or I guess they weren't really his friends, but like shouldn't have like basically sold out Morpheus and Neo and Trinity. But just a very interesting character progression for Cypher. But just again, an excellent cast. Like, can't imagine pretty much anybody else in these roles usually. Apparently, the role of Neo was originally offered to Will Smith, and according to my research, Val Kilmer was going to be Morpheus. I think Will Smith apparently said he didn't understand what the film was about, and ended up doing Wild Wild West instead. And apparently, also Jean Reno from The Professional, Mission Impossible, was also role offered initially from when I was reading the role of Agent Smith, but was unable to commit to it because I think he didn't really want to have to spend all that time in Australia when they were filming it. Digital rain is what it's called, the effect of the Matrix where the code is coming down. That's a very iconic Matrix kind of thing here. Another amazing thing about this film, let's see if I still have it over here, is the soundtrack. Quite an excellent, amazing soundtrack. Have it on CD still. The CD case has definitely seen better days. It's like separated right there, but there's the disc. And then you have the track list here. Just an amazing mix of music. This is not the score. This is just the actual soundtrack to it. But the music on this movie, in this film, is incredible. So you have a lot of it is pre-existing from other albums. So like you have Marilyn Manson. Track 1 is "Rock Is Dead" by Marilyn Manson. That's from I think his 1998 album. You have "Spy Break" by the Propellerheads. That's also off a 1998 album. "Bad Blood" by Ministry. You have "Club to Death" by Rob D. Beat Manifesto with Prime Audio Soup. "Leave You Far Behind" by Lunatic Calm. "Minefields" by The Prodigy. Rob Zombie, "Dragula," the Hot Rod Herman remix. That song's featured when Neo first meets Trinity in like the club, and it's just like bumping, everybody's dancing to it. You have the, My Own Summer, "Shove It" by Deftones. You have Hive with "Ultrasonic Sound." Monster Magnet is "Look to the Orb for Your Warning." Du Hast by Rammstein. And then "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine. Like, "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine is the perfect ending song in to this movie, because it's like I don't know how, like, if it was intentional. It was obviously intentional making that the closing credits song, but like it's like as soon as Neo flies off, it just leads into the guitar where it's like like that. Like, it's just like perfect. I remember like seeing that in 2019, just being like, yes, this is like the meme of the guy who's like, or whatever that is, because it's just a perfect way to end the film with that particular track. We're now going to get into the plot of this film. I'm actually going to break out the old notebook here for that. Let me actually just find, because I remember like taking a lot of notes when I watched it for the 1998 or 1999 series, I should say. Sorry. So basically, the film opens off with like the Matrix code going in. Trinity is in the Matrix, like hacking into something, and agents are tipped off that she's there. And there's this whole thing with there's cell phones, but then there's also hard lines, which are basically landlines, which you could use to exit. I think you enter the Matrix through them as well, but like, or entering the Matrix when you're not really connected to it, still like permanently connected to it, because you can basically like still get into it. You just, if you're already linked into it, you don't need to use the phones. But basically, like, these police roll up to this building. They go inside kind of without being told to, because Agent Smith shows up and he's like, hey, like, I told you guys to wait out here. And the cop outside is like, I set up 2 squads to get like 1 person. Like, it should be, they're all right. He's like, no, I think lieutenant. Sorry, he's like, no, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. And then like It shows her do the jump kick, which was parodied in the first Shrek film because Princess Fiona, the Cameron Diaz character, does it. But does a kick, gets chased down by agents, eventually escapes and gets to the landline, dives through like a off like a roof, does like the spinning kind of dive, gets back, and then it shows Neo is asleep at his desk at home. His guy comes up, he's like, "Hey, I need the stuff," and he like gives him like the computer disk or whatever it's on it, probably like some kind of program to hack something or something like that. And on the screen it says the Matrix has you, like follow the White Rabbit, and he goes to the nightclub. He meets Trinity. Let's see here. There's just tons of computers in his thing there. Basically, like the apartment number is 101, which is like obviously a binary number there. He follows the White Rabbit because it's tattooed onto his guy's girlfriend's like arm or shoulder. So he goes to the club, meets Trinity, and you get into some interesting gender politics with the scene. And I think it's interesting now with both the Wachowskis having transitioned. Is Trinity introduces herself, and he's just like, "I just thought you would be a guy," and she's like, "Most guys do." So just an interesting scene there. She asks what the Matrix is and says that Morpheus is basically looking for him. He falls, goes home, is late for work. This is kind of like where he's like, you decide to get to work, or you decide not to have a job, and then like Morpheus calls him on like a cell phone that gets delivered to him. He is trying to be guided out of the building by like climbing through like a window and trying to like climb onto like a scaffolding. He's like, you can either exit the building through the scaffolding, or the other way is through the agent's custody. And at this point in the movie, Neo just isn't ready, so he basically gets arrested. And kind of like a part of the hero's journey is kind of like failing initially. This whole film does the whole hero's journey thing with like the mentor with Morpheus, and then Keanu or Neo having to kind of just do the thing when he's like dealing with Agent Smith. He meets Agent Smith, and this is where they try to offer him like a plea deal. He's like, "We have like, you're a computer programmer by day, but by night you're this hacker Neo," and like he's like, "One of these lives has a future, the other doesn't," and they want him to help them bring in Morpheus basically. And he's like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do that." They bug him. They plant the thing in his stomach. That's like the little like mini Sentinel thing. And then they eventually, I think, like call him to have a meeting. They pull the bug out. He beats Morpheus, and then basically it's like the red pill and the blue pill. He takes the red pill, which basically disconnects him from the Matrix, and they grab him, they rescue him, and they have to do a whole bunch of like muscular reconstruction because he's never used his muscles before. There's an interesting line where he's talking to Morpheus, and he's like, "Hey, my eyes hurt," and Morpheus is like, "That's because you've never used them before." And basically, like he tells him the whole thing about this is before that, but like how humans are harvested as basically batteries for the machines. The Animatrix goes into more of the background on how this started because there's like I think it was like the Renaissance. I think it was the Renaissance is what's called the Animatrix. It's a two-part like not episode necessarily, but two parts. One shows how like AI came to be about, and the other part was how it basically humanity basically became enslaved by the machines. But and the whole thing about like the fake reality, like the reality that you think is real, is just a very elaborate simulation. So very just like very cool, like conceptually and from like a storytelling standpoint. Sorry. The sunglasses in this movie are all very reflective, except for when we get to the end, we'll discuss Neo's glasses. But it gets removed. There's a bunch of like Wizard of Oz. Was it Wizard of Oz? I think there was a Wizard of Oz reference in there. Basically, and they say the year is closer to 2199, while the simulation is set in the year 1999. And the Nebuchadnezzar, which is their hover ship, was built in 2069. So let me see. People be harvested for energy. There's a whole thing with residual self-image and mental projection of the digital self, which is why basically Neo looks the way he does in the Matrix, while Neo in the real world is basically like doesn't have hair really or anything like that. Let's see here. The sun. So they do the whole martial arts training thing, and this is kind of like where the iconic line of "I know kung fu" comes from. And Morpheus is telling him about like he's like these things are never gonna be as strong as you because you can basically break these rules. He's like you can jump higher. I think that's kind of like the jump test is kind of like a normal person would obviously just fall. Neo obviously does, but once you kind of realize how you can bend the rules within the Matrix, you can basically just do a lot of different stuff. They go into a different simulation. This is the one of the woman in the red dress, and he's like, I've seen agents like punch through concrete walls. I see people shoot at them with entire clips and miss. But he's like, but their systems are still built in a world based on rules, and you'll be able to basically be able to bend those rules. They'll never be as strong as you are. And he's like, I tell you that I can dodge bullets, and he's like, no, I'll tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to do that. There's a whole thing with the Sentinels in the real world trying to track down the ships. So they have an EMP which they can use to like destroy them. There's a great conversation between Cypher and Neo about how he's like, "Hey, I wish I took the blue pill," which leads to the whole Cypher betrayal story arc. And basically, at this point, Morpheus, like, Cypher goes into the Matrix. He's having dinner with Smith, or Smith is just there. But he's having dinner. He's like, I know that my brain is telling me that the steak, I know this steak is fake, but my brain is telling me that it's juicy and delicious. He's like, I want to go back into the Matrix. I want no memory of any of this. And I want to have, like, I want to be, like, someone important, like an actor. And then the whole thing is he's going to get reinserted with, in exchange for turning on Morpheus and getting them Morpheus. Because they need the access codes to Zion's mainframe. And then Cypher's like, I don't have those, but I can get you the guy who does. So basically, they go in to meet the Oracle. The Oracle basically tells Neo, he's like, hey, sorry, man, you're not the one. Which is basically, I think that the Oracle is there to kind of tell him what he needs to hear. And then kind of go from there. There's a great line where she's like, oh, don't worry about the vase. And he's like, what vase? He knocks it over. He's like, that vase. And then she's like, here's what's really going to mess with you is like, if I didn't tell you about that, would you still have knocked it over? So like a lot of like, don't necessarily know if it would be like predestination or stuff like that, but like a lot of really interesting just like concepts are at play in this film. Basically, they go to the Oracle, but at that point, Cypher has thrown his phone away as a way to kind of indicate to the agents where they are. They get rolled on by the agents. Morpheus gets grabbed by them. Cypher turns on and kills Dozer and presumably kills Tank, who are the two people on the Nebuchadnezzar that are I think like actual, I don't want to say actual humans, but they're humans, but they're Zion board, so they don't have the computer inputs at the back of their heads like Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity do, or Cypher even. But so they get presumably killed, and he's like, hey, like, I'm doing this to get, he calls Trinity, he's like, hey, I'm doing this to get out of the Matrix. If there's anything terrible you want to tell these other two, I gotta kill these other guys. He's about to try to unplug Neo, but then Tank gets up and blasts him. They get out of the Matrix, and then they're like, we need to go back in. They're actually going to consider pulling the plug on Morpheus because they know why he's in there or why they want him, and it would protect Zion by just disconnecting him and having Morpheus die so he doesn't give away the access codes. I don't think Morpheus would have given them away, but they were trying to. They had these like electrodes like plugged to his head, and they were definitely trying to use like various methods to basically break Morpheus and have him give those codes up. But Neo's like, I'm going back in, and Trinity's like, I'm going to, and Neo's like, no, you can't go. She's like, no, I'm going with you. The entire lobby shootout, just an iconic scene, amazing scene. I had these two McFarlane action figures from the first line of Matrix figures they did, because I think the first line was like it was Neo and Trinity from the lobby, and it was cool because they each had these L-shaped pieces. Neo had on the base, he had a peg in his hand that you could put him on, so he did the cartwheel, because there's a part where he cartwheels through with an M16, he's like blasting the guards. And the other one is Trinity doing the wall running thing. They were really cool action figures, and the reason I got them is I thought they were really cool, but also they made really interesting bookends because the pieces were L-shaped, so you could basically have like Neo on one side, Trinity on the other, and books or whatever else in the middle. Those are in a box right now in storage, but they were really cool. They also have one of the Morpheus figures, and I think the Morpheus figure is actually from the Matrix Reloaded though, because he's got like the katana. But basically, they go in. They rescue Morpheus. The whole bullet time thing happens where he's dodging the agents, and like he eventually gets shot. And then I think the agent is like only human, and she shoots him. She's like, dodge this. But they go in, they get Morpheus, and now they're on their way trying to get out of the Matrix. But agents are on their tail. They get Morpheus out. Trinity gets out, but right before Neo gets out, they shoot the hardline phone, blows it up, leaving basically Neo stranded in the subway. And this subway fight between Smith and Neo is absolutely iconic. Sorry, I just gotta fix these really quick. There we go. The little thing popped out. But the fight in the subway is just one of the more iconic lines. It's got like some great lines from Hugo Weaving. It's like Mr. Anderson, but the way it's framed, it's filmed and shot like a western, but also like a martial arts film. So it's like a hybrid martial arts western kind of shootout or fight, basically. Like the beginning of it is very like cameras pulled back, and Smith and Neo are at the opposite ends of this kind of like this subway tunnel, like on the platform, and it's framed very much like an old style like western like duel. You don't have tumbleweeds, but you actually have like like a newspaper blows through exactly like a tumbleweed, and then they like both draw their guns. They start firing at each other. They do the thing where they jump at each other and they're kind of like slowed down, and they're firing at each other. They both have emptied their clips, and Agent Smith is like, "You're empty," and he's like, "Yeah, so are you." And then they continue fighting. A great martial arts fight. Smith at one point gets the upper hand and does the thing where he's like holding him in front of the subway. He's like, "Do you hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. Inevitability is the sound of your death." He's like, "My name is Neo," and they continue fighting. Eventually, there's a great scene where like Hugo Weaving's glasses get broken. His sunglasses, like one of the frames is like shattered, and he just basically takes them off, and he's like throws his sunglasses away. Like basically loses the part of his costume, but becomes even more like terrifying with his glasses off because you can see his eyes at this point. So they continue fighting, and I think at one point he's like Smith gets hit by a train, but then it does this thing where the subway train stops, and basically like Smith just pops out. Neo goes running, and she's like, "Run, Neo!" Like Trinity's like, "You better just run." So he runs, tries to get away to where this phone is, and eventually just gets shot, and gets shot multiple times. But then she's talking to him. She's like, "Hey, I got everything the Oracle told me would happen has happened except for this." Like she's like, "I basically have fallen in love with the one," or whatever it was. But Neo is able to basically just stand up, and I think at this point he's like seeing in code, because you see him looking at the agents, and you see like the green and like coding outlines from them. They basically all unload on him with their guns, and he kind of just does the thing where he like puts his hand up and makes all the bullets fall. Basically dives into Smith and basically like kills Smith and explodes. The other two agents just run off. And at this point, though, the Sentinels are attacking the Nebuchadnezzar, and they're basically like going to have to use the EMP. They're like, "Well, you can't use the EMP while he's still in there because it'll kill him." And Morpheus is like, "Oh, he's gonna get out. He'll get out." And then eventually, like they get out. Trinity and Neo fall in love, and then it cuts to the ending scene where it's got like another code screen where it's like computer like simulate like termination, like connection terminated, stuff like that. And Neo's on the phone. He's like, "I'm gonna free a bunch of people, and then you're not gonna like this." And then like it's like, but we don't know where we're gonna go. Where we go from here? This is the interesting thing with the sunglasses: is Neo's glasses in this scene are non-reflective. Everybody else has reflective glasses, I think, or most of the time they are reflective, and you can actually see Keanu Reeves' eyes. I definitely feel those sunglasses, that was a choice from the filmmakers and costume designers to not have him have reflective glasses in this scene. But this is what he basically like. You see him walk out of a phone booth, puts the sunglasses on. He basically looks up, and then you see the camera pan out above the city, and then you just see him fly off. Rage Against the Machine to Wake Up starts playing. Like again, perfect ending song to this film. Just an iconic, amazing film, a groundbreaking film. If you haven't seen it, just definitely go out and see it. I would recommend seeing the other films as well, even though I feel the original trilogy, I think the Matrix Reloaded is a little bit less good than the original, and then Matrix Revolutions is less good than Reloaded. So it kind of each one got a little bit worse. They're still a lot of fun, but they got a little bit worse with the sequels. And then I ended up really enjoying Resurrections. So if I were to rank the films, I would say obviously the number one is the first, the OG, then Matrix Reloaded, then Resurrections, and Revolutions being in last place. And also the Animatrix is really cool too, which is a kind of a anthology collection of short form stories from various like anime directors about different aspects of the Matrix that tie into the other films, as well as give backstory to the original film as well. But that is going to do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few days with a video game from 1999, and then of course we'll be starting our fourth cycle when we jump back to 1990. So remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one.